Dramily.com, unlimited drama series.
The text message lit up Sarah's phone like a neon sign advertising my humiliation. Can't wait to feel your hands on me again tonight, baby. Room 237 at the Riverside Motel. Niosh, Josh. I stood there in my own garage at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, grease still caked under my fingernails from fixing Mrs. Henderson's transmission, staring at words that turned my 20-year marriage into a punchline. Sarah had left her phone on my workbench while she went inside to shower. One buzz, one glance, one moment that cracked my world in half. My name's Danny Mitchell, and I fix things for a living. Cars, mostly. Sometimes small engines, lawn equipment, whatever keeps the lights on in our little post-industrial town of Millbrook. But standing there, with my wife's phone in my hands, I realized some things can't be fixed with a wrench and elbow grease. Danny, you coming in? Sarah's voice drifted from the house. Sweet as honey, like it had been for 2 decades. Like it probably was when she whispered to Josh about room 237. Yeah, just finishing up, I called back, setting her phone down exactly where she'd left it. My hands were shaking, not from the October cold seeping through the garage door, but from something darker, something that felt like it might eat me alive if I let it. I'd suspected something was off for months. The late nights at the insurance office, where she worked as an HR manager. The sudden interest in yoga classes that ran until 9 p.m. The way she'd started dressing nicer, wearing perfume to grocery store runs. But suspecting and knowing are 2 different animals entirely. Niosh, Josh, Brennan. I knew the name from Sarah's work stories. Some hotshot tech consultant who'd been helping their company upgrade systems. Drove a white Tesla that probably cost more than I made in 2 years. Sarah had mentioned him maybe a dozen times over the past 6 months. Always professional, always casual, always a lie. I walked into the house and found Sarah in the kitchen, hair still damp from her shower, wearing that blue robe I'd bought her for Christmas 3 years ago. She looked up and smiled, and for a second I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. How was your day? She asked, pouring herself a glass of wine. She didn't offer me one. Hadn't in months. Same as always. Fixed what was broken, got paid to do it. I sat down at the kitchen table, studying her face, looking for tells. Guilt, shame, something. How about you? Any exciting meetings? Oh, you know how it is. Budget reviews, policy updates. Nothing too thrilling. She took a sip of wine and avoided my eyes. I might have to work late again tomorrow. Big presentation on Thursday. There it was, the lie, delivered smooth as silk. Tomorrow was Wednesday. Room 237 was waiting. Our daughter Emma chose that moment to wander into the kitchen, earbuds dangling around her neck like a technological necklace. 18 years old and sharp as a tack, she'd inherited Sarah's brains and my stubborn streak. College-bound in the spring, though we hadn't figured out how to pay for it yet. Hey, Dad, Mom? She grabbed an apple from the bowl on the counter, then paused. Everything okay? You both look weird. Everything's fine, sweetheart, Sarah said quickly. Just tired. Emma shrugged and headed back upstairs, but not before giving me a look that said she wasn't buying it. Kids have radar for parental tension, always have. After Sarah went to bed, I sat in my recliner and stared at the ceiling. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of shared dreams, inside jokes, and building something together. We'd survived Emma's difficult toddler years, my dad's death, Sarah's miscarriage when Emma was 10. We'd made it through lean times, when work was scarce, and good times, when we could actually afford a vacation. And now Josh Brennan was going to feel her hands on him in room 237. I must have dozed off in the chair because I woke up to Sarah kissing my forehead at 6 a.m., already dressed for work in her sharp gray suit. I left coffee for you, she said softly. Love you too, I replied automatically, the words tasting like ash. She grabbed her purse and phone and headed for the door. I waited until I heard her car pull out of the driveway, then called my best friend Mike Rodriguez. Mike owned Rodriguez Boxing Gym on the south side of town, in a converted warehouse that smelled like sweat, determination, and broken dreams. He'd been trying to teach me to fight properly for 15 years, with limited success. I had the build for it, 6'2", broad shoulders from years of manual labor, but I lacked the killer instinct. Mike always said I was too nice for my own good. Danny, it's 6 in the morning, man. Somebody better be dead or dying. I need to hit something, Mike. Hard. Can you open early? There was a pause. Mike had known me long enough to hear the edge in my voice. Give me 20 minutes. And Danny? Bring hand wraps. The gym was my sanctuary. Had been since high school, when Mike was still fighting professionally, and I was just a kid with anger issues and nowhere to put them. The familiar smell of leather and liniment oil hit me as soon as I walked through the door. Mike was waiting by the heavy bags, already changed into his workout gear. "Talk," he said, tossing me a pair of gloves. I told him everything while I wrapped my hands. The text message, the months of suspicion, the lies about working late. Mike listened without interruption, the way he always did when life threw a sucker punch. "So what's the plan?" he asked when I finished. "I don't know. I've never been cheated on before. Is there a handbook?" "Yeah, it's called divorce court. But somehow I don't think that's what you want to hear." He was right. Divorce felt like surrender, like admitting that Josh Brennan was better than me at something that mattered. I started working the heavy bag, throwing combinations Mike had drilled into me over the years. Jab, cross, hook, jab, cross, hook, each punch carrying 20 years of frustration. "You could confront them," Mike suggested, holding the bag steady. "Catch them in the act. Get proof for the lawyers. Or you could get creative. Make them wish they'd never heard of Room 237. I stopped punching and looked at him. Mike had grown up harder than me, in neighborhoods where problems got solved with fists and cunning rather than honest conversation. He'd gone legitimate years ago, but the street kid was still in there somewhere. What do you mean, creative? I mean, maybe it's time they learned that actions have consequences, real ones. That afternoon, I closed the auto shop early and drove to the Riverside Motel. It was exactly the kind of place you'd expect for a cheap affair. 2 stories of faded paint and broken dreams, tucked between a truck stop and an abandoned factory. Room 237 was on the 2nd floor, overlooking the parking lot. Sarah's Honda was already there, parked next to Josh's pristine white Tesla. Seeing them together, her practical sedan dwarfed by his flashy status symbol, made something cold and hard settle in my chest. I sat in my pickup truck and watched, waited. At 4:47 p.m., the door to room 237 opened, and they came out together. Sarah looked rumpled, her hair messed up in a way that told the whole story. Josh had his hand on the small of her back, possessive and casual, like he owned her. They kissed before getting into their separate cars. Not a quick peck goodbye, but something deeper, something that belonged to me. That's when I made my first mistake, or my first smart move, depending on how you look at it. I waited until they were gone, then walked over to Josh's Tesla. Beautiful car, probably had more computer chips than my entire garage. I pulled out my keys and dragged them along the driver's side, from headlight to taillight, leaving a deep gouge in the pristine white paint. Then I took out my pocket knife and put a small hole in his front tire. Not enough to cause a blowout, just enough to make it go flat slowly. Under his windshield wiper, I left a note written on a piece of paper from my invoice pad. "You don't know who you're messing with, but you're about to find out." It felt good, better than good. For the first time in months, I felt like I had some control over the situation. I should have been more careful about the security cameras. The Facebook post appeared at 7:23 a.m. the next morning, courtesy of my neighbor Mrs. Chen, who apparently had nothing better to do than monitor her Ring doorbell footage and share it with the world. "Caught this vandal on camera last night. Anyone recognize him? This is what's wrong with our neighborhood these days." The video was grainy but clear enough. Me, walking away from Josh's Tesla with my keys in my hand, looking guilty as sin. Within an hour, it had been shared 47 times. By lunch, half of Millbrook knew that Danny Mitchell was going around vandalizing cars. Sarah confronted me the moment she got home from work, her face flushed with what I assumed was righteous indignation. Now I know it was probably panic. "Danny, what the hell is wrong with you? Mrs. Chen's video is all over Facebook. People are calling you a criminal. Maybe I am," I said, not looking up from the carburetor I was rebuilding at the kitchen table. "Maybe I'm tired of being the good guy all the time. This isn't you. You don't destroy other people's property. You fix things, remember?" The irony was thick enough to choke on. She was lecturing me about destroying things while she was busy destroying our marriage in room 237. Whose car was it, Sarah? The question hung in the air like smoke. I watched her face carefully, looking for the tell. There it was, a tiny flinch, barely visible, but I'd been studying her expressions for 20 years. How would I know? Some random person, probably. Danny, you need help. This kind of behavior, it's not normal. Neither is working late every night. Neither is yoga classes that run until 9 p.m. Neither is wearing perfume to buy groceries. Now she looked genuinely confused, which was either great acting or proof that cheaters are masters of compartmentalization. You're being paranoid, and frankly, it's scary. Maybe you should talk to someone, a therapist or what? You'll leave me? I finally looked up from the carburetor. Would that make things easier for you, Sarah, if I just went away? She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not guilt, not shame, something colder, calculation. I'm worried about you, she said finally. This isn't the man I married. No, it's not. The man you married was a pushover. He fixed everyone else's problems and ignored his own. Maybe it's time for an upgrade. That night, Sarah slept in the guest room. She said it was because she was afraid of me, but I knew better. She was protecting herself, building a narrative where I was the unstable one, the dangerous one, setting up her exit strategy. Emma cornered me the next morning while Sarah was in the shower. Dad, what's going on? Mom's acting weird. You're acting weird. And now there's this thing on Facebook about you vandalizing cars? It's complicated, Em. I'm 18, not 8. Try me. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. When had she gotten so grown up? When had those sharp eyes learned to see through adult bullshit? Your mother and I are having some problems. I can't give you details, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? She studied my face the way she used to study math problems, looking for the right answer. Are you getting divorced? I don't know, maybe. Is it your fault or hers? Probably both. She nodded slowly. Okay, but Dad? Whatever you're planning, don't do anything stupid. I need at least one parent who isn't completely insane. If only she knew. That afternoon, I got a visit at the shop from Josh Brennan himself. He pulled up in his wounded Tesla, the scratch along the side like a badge of honor. The tire had been replaced, but I could see the anger in his face from 50 yards away. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with the kind of lean build that came from expensive gym memberships and personal trainers. Designer jeans, polo shirt, watch that probably cost more than my truck. Everything about him screamed success and entitlement. You Danny Mitchell? He asked, walking into my garage like he owned it. Depends who's asking. The guy whose car you vandalized. I've got you on video, asshole. I set down my wrench and turned to face him fully. He was maybe 6 feet tall, athletic but soft. The kind of guy who'd never been in a real fight in his life. Prove it was me. I don't have to prove anything. I know it was you, and you know it was you. The question is, what are we going to do about it? We? There's no we here, Josh. You want to call the cops? Call the cops. You want to sue me? Sue me? But understand something? I'm not the kind of man who backs down from a fight. Something in my voice must have gotten through to him because he took a step backward. Look, I don't want trouble. Just stay away from my car. Stay away from me. We clear? Crystal. But Josh, you might want to think about staying away from things that don't belong to you. Some people get real upset about that. He left without another word, but I could see him making a phone call before he even got to his car. Probably to Sarah, warning her that her husband was off the rails. That evening, Mike came by the shop with a 6-pack of beer and a proposition. I've been thinking about your situation, he said, settling into the folding chair I kept by my workbench. You want to fight fire with fire? You need to be smart about it. I'm listening. Information is power. You need to know everything about this Josh character, where he lives, where he works, what he's afraid of. Then you use that information to make his life complicated. How do I get information like that? Mike smiled, and for a second I saw the street kid he used to be. You'd be surprised what people will tell you if you know how to ask. Over the next week, I became a student of psychological warfare. Mike introduced me to some of his old contacts, guys who'd learned to survive by being smarter and meaner than their enemies. They taught me about social engineering, about finding pressure points, about making someone's life miserable without breaking any laws. I learned that Josh Brennan lived in a downtown loft that cost $4,000 a month. I learned that he'd been married twice and divorced twice, both times for cheating. I learned that he owed back taxes to 3 different states and that his consulting business was mostly smoke and mirrors. Most importantly, I learned that he had a reputation for seducing married women and then discarding them when he got bored. Sarah was just his latest conquest, a middle-aged insurance manager with a stable marriage and something to lose, perfect prey for a predator like Josh. Armed with this knowledge, I began my campaign. It started small. Josh liked to work out at the same gym where Sarah took her fake yoga classes. I arranged to be there one evening when he was finishing his routine. I didn't approach him directly. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I struck up a conversation with one of the other members, making sure Josh could overhear. "Yeah, I heard about that
Your intern filed this, then withdrew it. What did you promise her?
It was consensual.
He's 23 years old!
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
consultant who's been working with the insurance companies around town. Apparently, he's got a thing for married women. Real predator type, you know? I feel sorry for the husbands who don't know what's happening." Josh's face went white, but he couldn't say anything without admitting he'd been eavesdropping. He left the gym 10 minutes later. The next day, I called the IRS tip line and reported Josh's suspicious income patterns. Not fraud, exactly, but enough irregularities to trigger an audit. It was all legal and above board, but it would tie him up for months. Item 4. I also started a whisper campaign. Millbrook was a small town, and gossip traveled faster than wildfire. I didn't spread lies. I didn't have to. The truth about Josh's history was damaging enough. Soon, everyone knew about his 2 divorces, his tax problems, and his reputation as a homewrecker. Sarah noticed the change in atmosphere immediately. People who used to greet her warmly at the grocery store now gave her cold looks. Her boss started asking pointed questions about her relationship with their consultant. The yoga instructor mentioned that several members had complained about inappropriate behavior in the parking lot. "People are talking about me," Sarah told me one night, her voice small and worried, "saying terrible things." "What kind of things?" That I'm having an affair with Josh Brennan." I looked up from my newspaper, meeting her eyes directly. "Are you?" The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. Finally, she looked away. "Of course not. How can you even ask me that?" "Because you haven't denied it. I shouldn't have to deny it. You should trust me." "Trust is earned, Sarah. And lately, you haven't been earning it." She started crying then, which might have moved me a month ago. Now it just looked like manipulation. "I don't know what's happened to you," she sobbed. "You've become someone I don't recognize, someone cruel. Maybe I'm just becoming someone who fights back." The breaking point came the following Friday night. Sarah announced she was going out with her friend Jennifer from work, a girls' night to blow off steam. But I'd already confirmed that Jennifer was out of town visiting her sister. I followed Sarah to the Riverside Motel, where Josh's Tesla was waiting in the same spot as before. Room 237, just like old times. But this time, I was ready for them. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I sat in my truck in the motel parking lot, watching room 237, and made a series of phone calls that would change everything. The first call was to Mike. "It's time," I said simply. "You sure about this, Danny? Once we cross this line, there's no going back. They crossed the line months ago. I'm just evening the score." The second call was to Emma. "I need you to stay at your friend Katie's house tonight. Don't ask questions, just do it." "Dad, you're scaring me." "Good, that means you're paying attention. Go to Katie's. I'll explain everything tomorrow." The third call was to Sarah's boss, Richard Hartwell. I'd met him at company parties over the years. A straight-laced man in his 60s who took the insurance business very seriously. "Mr. Hartwell? This is Danny Mitchell, Sarah's husband. I'm sorry to call so late, but I thought you should know that your HR manager is currently in room 237 at the Riverside Motel with Josh Brennan. I thought you might want to know, given that she's supposed to be maintaining professional boundaries with consultants." There was a long pause. "Mr. Mitchell, are you certain about this?" "Dead certain. I can give you the license plate numbers if you'd like to verify." "That won't be necessary. Thank you for bringing this to my attention." The fourth call was to Josh's ex-wife, Linda. Mike's contacts had provided her number, along with the information that she'd never gotten over Josh's betrayal and would love a chance for payback. "Linda, you don't know me, but I'm dealing with your ex-husband Josh Brennan. He's currently destroying my marriage the same way he destroyed yours. I thought you might like to know that he's been telling people you were crazy, and that's why your marriage failed. Apparently, he's got quite a story about your mental breakdown. That bastard, she hissed. What do you need? Nothing illegal. Just creative justice. I'm listening. By morning, I had set in motion a series of events that would unravel Josh Brennan's carefully constructed life like a cheap sweater. Linda had called his current clients with concerns about his professional conduct. Richard Hartwell had scheduled an emergency meeting with Sarah for Monday morning, and I had documented evidence of their affair that would stand up in any divorce court. But I wasn't done, not even close. Sarah came home Saturday morning looking guilty and disheveled, with a story about staying over at Jennifer's because she'd had too much wine. I let her tell the lie, nodding in all the right places, while I planned the next phase of my campaign. How was your girls' night? I asked over coffee. Fine. We just talked and watched movies. Nothing exciting. That's nice. I'm glad you have friends you can count on. She looked at me suspiciously, probably wondering why I wasn't grilling her about her whereabouts. The truth was, I didn't need to. I had all the evidence I needed, and more importantly, I had something better than evidence. I had a plan. Monday morning arrived, with the kind of autumn chill that cuts through your jacket and settles in your bones. Sarah left for work nervous and distracted, probably wondering if her boss had heard any of the gossip that was circulating around town. She didn't have to wonder long. Richard Hartwell called her into his office at 9:15 a.m. and terminated her employment effective immediately. No severance, no references, no second chances. The official reason was conduct unbecoming of a management position. But everyone knew the real story. Sarah called me from the parking lot, crying hysterically. Danny, I've been fired. Richard says there were complaints about my conduct with Josh. This is insane. I haven't done anything wrong. Maybe you should come home. We need to talk. You sound like you already know about this. I know about a lot of things, Sarah. Come home. She arrived 20 minutes later, her face streaked with tears and mascara. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Sit down, I said, gesturing to the kitchen table where I'd laid out printed copies of text messages, photos from the motel parking lot, and a timeline of her lies over the past 6 months. Her face went white as she saw the evidence spread out like a prosecutor's case file. Where did you get these? Does it matter? The question is, what are we going to do about it? Danny, I can explain. No, you can't. You can apologize, you can beg for forgiveness, you can promise it'll never happen again. But you can't explain 20 years of marriage down the drain for some smooth-talking con artist who's probably already looking for his next victim. It's not like that. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You got bored with your boring husband and your boring life, and Josh Brennan made you feel special, made you feel young and desirable and worth lying for. How am I doing so far? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to pack a bag and go stay with your sister in Cleveland. You're going to think very carefully about whether this marriage is worth saving, and while you're thinking, I'm going to decide whether you're worth forgiving. You can't throw me out of my own house. Watch me. I've got evidence of adultery, which means I've got grounds for divorce. I've got a good lawyer who says I can probably keep the house and most of our assets, and I've got nothing left to lose, which makes me very dangerous. What about Emma? Emma's 18. She can make her own choices about who she wants to live with. But if I were you, I wouldn't count on her sympathy. She's smart enough to figure out who the real victim is here. Sarah stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes. Fear. Not of physical violence. I'd never raised a hand to her and never would. But fear of the man I'd become. The man who fought back. I don't know you anymore, she whispered. Good. The man you knew was weak. He let people walk all over him and called it being nice. This version of me has a spine. She packed a bag and left that afternoon, but not before one final confrontation that showed me just how deep her betrayal went. You want to know the truth? She said, standing in our bedroom doorway with her suitcase in hand. Josh isn't the first. There have been others over the years. You were just too trusting to see it. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I didn't let her see it. How many others? Does it matter? The point is, this marriage has been over for a long time. I just didn't have the courage to end it. But you had the courage to humiliate me. I never meant for you to find out. That doesn't make it better, Sarah. That makes it worse. She left without saying goodbye, and I stood in our empty house, feeling like I'd won a battle but lost the war. 20 years of marriage, reduced to evidence files and legal documents, but I wasn't done with Josh Brennan. Not by a long shot. That evening, I drove to his downtown loft and knocked on his door. When he opened it, I could see the fear in his eyes. Word travels fast in a small town, and by now he knew that Sarah had been fired and that their affair was public knowledge. "What do you want?" he asked, not inviting me in. "To talk, man to man." "We have nothing to talk about." "Sure we do. We have Sarah to talk about. We have your pattern of destroying marriages to talk about. We have your future in this town to talk about." He tried to close the door, but I put my foot in the way. "Here's the thing, Josh. You picked the wrong marriage to destroy. You thought you were dealing with some weak, trusting husband who'd roll over and take it. But you miscalculated." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm informing you. This town isn't big enough for both of us, and I've been here a lot longer than you have. You've got two choices: pack up and leave, or stay and deal with the consequences of your actions. You can't run me out of town. This isn't the Old West." "You're right, it's not. It's worse. In the Old West, a man could settle his problems with a fair fight. These days, we have to be more creative." I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo that Linda had sent me. Josh, passed out drunk at a party, with some very compromising images that would destroy his professional reputation if they went public. "Your ex-wife says hello, by the way. She's been very helpful." His face went pale. "What do you want?" "I want you gone, out of town, out of Sarah's life, out of my sight. You've got 48 hours, and if I don't, then you'll find out just how creative a small-town mechanic can be when someone destroys his life." I left him standing in his doorway, probably wondering how his perfect plan had gone so wrong. The truth was, predators like Josh counted on their victims being isolated and ashamed. They never expected the husband to fight back with the same ruthless tactics they used. 2 days later, Josh Brennan's loft was empty, and his Tesla was gone. Word around town was that he'd taken a job in California and left without notice. I never found out if that was true, and I didn't care. What mattered was that he was gone. Sarah called me from Cleveland a week later. "I heard Josh left town." "Did he? I wouldn't know. Danny, what did you do?" "I protected what was mine, something I should have done months ago. I want to come home. I want to work this out." I looked around our empty house, at the photos on the mantle showing 20 years of shared history, at the life we'd built together before she decided to tear it down. "I don't think that's possible, Sarah. Please, I made a mistake. I know that now, but we can fix this. Some things can't be fixed. Some things, once they're broken forever." "So that's it? 20 years, and you're just throwing it away?" "I'm not the one who threw it away. I'm just the one who's tired of pretending it can be put back together." She hung up without saying goodbye, and I sat in my quiet house, wondering if I'd won or lost. Josh was gone, Sarah was gone, and I was alone with the wreckage of my marriage and the knowledge that I'd become someone I barely recognized. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Emma came home from Katie's house the next day and found me in the garage, working on an engine rebuild that didn't need to be finished for another week. "So," she said, settling into the folding chair Mike usually occupied. "Mom's not coming back, is she?" "Probably not." "Good. She made her choice when she decided to cheat on you. I'm just sorry it took you so long to make yours." I looked up at my daughter, surprised by the steel in her voice. "You knew?" "I'm not blind, Dad. I saw the way she was acting, the lies about working late, the way she started dressing differently. I was waiting for you to figure it out." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because it wasn't my place, and because I wanted to see what kind of man my father really was, whether he'd fight for his family or just roll over and take it." "And what's the verdict?" She smiled, and for the first time in months, it reached her eyes. "You're tougher than I thought, old man. Mom picked the wrong guy to mess with." 3 months later, the divorce was final. Sarah got half of our savings and her car. I got the house, the business, and full custody of Emma. She also got a reputation in Millbrook that would follow her for years, while I got the respect of a community that had watched me stand up for myself when it mattered most. Mike threw a party at the gym to celebrate my freedom, and half the town showed up. People who'd watched the drama unfold from the sidelines came up to shake my hand and tell me they were proud of how I'd handled things. "You showed that city boy what happens when you mess with Millbrook people," old Mr. Peterson said, raising his beer in a toast. "You did what any real man would do," added Tom Bradley, whose own wife had left him for a traveling salesman 5 years earlier. You fought back. Standing in that gym, surrounded by people who'd known me my whole life, I realized that I'd gained something more valuable than I'd lost. I'd gained their respect, Emma's respect, and most importantly, my own self-respect. Sarah had taken 20 years of my life, but she'd given me something in return. The knowledge that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined, that when push came to shove, I wouldn't back down from a fight. And Josh Brennan? He'd learned that some small-town mechanics know how to use more than just wrenches to fix their problems. As the party wound down and people started heading home, Mike pulled me aside. "So what now?" he asked. "Now I rebuild. Same as always. Think you'll ever trust another woman?" I looked around the gym, at the punching bags and weight machines that had taught me to fight, at the friends who'd stood by me when everything fell apart. "Maybe. But if I do, she'll know from day one that she's dealing with a different kind of man, the kind who fights back." Mike grinned and raised his beer. To fighting back, I agreed, and meant every word.